What if I told you that Lewis Hamilton is already faster than Charles Leclerc, even before the season really starts? Because what just happened at Ferrari's private test in Fiorano is not normal, it is not usual, and it could completely change the balance within the team. Nobody expected Hamilton to get involved like this. Nobody expected these times, and much less in an environment where Ferrari was quietly working on the SF-26. The big question is, are we seeing the beginning of a new era at Ferrari, or just the first sign of something much bigger? This completely breaks the usual logic. Hamilton has historically avoided these types of tire development sessions, especially when they do not provide an immediate competitive advantage. But here the opposite happens. Ferrari not only includes him, but gives him a leading role from the first moment. And this is not a coincidence, it is an internal statement from the team. They want to build the SF-26 around it, they want to accelerate its integration, and above all, they want to understand how to extract the maximum performance from the car with their driving style. The scene at Fiorano was completely under control. Artificially wet track, constant conditions, stable temperatures, all designed to obtain clean and comparable data. And in that environment, Hamilton doesn't go out looking for a fast lap, he goes out to work. More than 140 laps in a single day are not a one-time experiment, they are an intensive simulation of the car's behavior. It is understanding how the car responds in each phase. Corner entry, traction, degradation, tire thermal management. Absolutely everything. But this is where the turning point begins to build. Because within that constant work, times begin to appear. And not just any times, but records that place him slightly ahead of Charles Leclerc in similar conditions. And this, although from the outside it may seem anecdotal, within Ferrari it has enormous weight. Leclerc is not only the main driver, he is the technical reference of the team, the point on which the latest cars have been developed. If Hamilton is already at that level or even above at certain times, it means that his adaptation is not only working, he is advancing deadlines. Now, you have to understand the technical context to avoid falling into superficial conclusions. The car used is not a pure race-spec SF-26, but a modified platform, a mule car designed for tire testing. This limits absolute comparisons, but does not invalidate relative ones. Because within the same environment, with the same conditions, the differences between pilots continue to be a direct reference for engineers. And what Ferrari engineers see is something very specific: consistency. Hamilton not only sets good times, he repeats them. It maintains pace, takes care of the tire, adapts its driving to changing conditions without losing stability. And this is exactly what Ferrari has been looking for years. Not only speed in one lap, but the ability to build performance in long runs, in variable situations, in scenarios where the car normally loses balance. This is where the SF-26 begins to take on real prominence in the story. This car is not a simple evolution, it is a change of concept. Ferrari has been working on a more predictable platform, more adaptable, less dependent on extremely narrow windows of operation. And what Hamilton is showing is that he understands that concept from the beginning. You're not fighting the car, you're working with it. And that changes absolutely everything. Because when a driver of his caliber achieves that connection so quickly, the development of the car accelerates exponentially. And while all this happens in silence, within a private test, away from the cameras, Ferrari is gaining something that cannot be easily measured in data: trust. Confidence in the project, confidence in the pilot, and above all, confidence that the SF-26 can be something much bigger than it seemed at the beginning. And this is where everything begins to escalate to a completely different level, because it is one thing to perform well in a test, and quite another is what that performance really means for the future of Ferrari and the SF-26. What engineers begin to detect after Lewis Hamilton's first long runs is not just speed or adaptation, it is something much deeper. Perfect correlation between what the driver feels and what the car delivers. And this, in Formula One, is pure gold. Because one of Ferrari's biggest problems in previous seasons was not only absolute performance, but the inconsistency between simulation, data, and real behavior on the track. There was a disconnection. And now, for the first time, that gap is beginning to disappear. Hamilton begins to give extremely precise feedback, aligned with what the car's sensors are recording. Each adjustment that is made has a clear, measurable, repeatable response. And this allows Ferrari to enter a phase that it rarely achieves so soon: efficient development. They are no longer testing blindly, they are now optimizing with direction. But the most important thing is not that, it is how Hamilton is directly influencing the evolution of the SF-26. Because during the test, you don't just limit yourself to rolling. Start pushing the car towards specific limits, looking for extreme behaviors, forcing situations that under normal conditions would not be explored in a tire test. And this is where you begin to notice the difference of a champion driver. You're not driving the car as it is, you're discovering what it can become. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc remains the team's natural reference, but for the first time a completely new dynamic is generated within the garage. There is no longer a single development path. Now there are two different approaches, two ways of understanding the car, and that forces Ferrari to make more complex decisions, but also richer ones on a technical level. And here appears a key detail that completely changes the reading of this test. In artificial wet track conditions, where grip is inconsistent and the tire's operating window is extremely delicate, Hamilton not only maintains control, he improves as the laps go by. This indicates something fundamental. Their ability to adapt is above average even within the elite. And that, translated to a race weekend, can make enormous differences at critical moments, especially when conditions change. Ferrari is beginning to realize that it hasn't just signed a fast driver. It has signed a development system itself. Each lap of Hamilton is providing information that accelerates the understanding of the car. Each batch is helping to better define the optimal operating window for the SF-26. And most importantly, each adjustment that works reinforces an idea that is beginning to take shape within the team. This car can be much more complete than it seemed. But not everything is as simple as it seems, because this growth also generates a silent tension. If Hamilton continues to advance at this pace, if he continues to close the gap or even surpass Leclerc in certain contexts, Ferrari is going to find itself in a situation that it did not foresee so soon. A real internal struggle from the beginning of the project. And that can be both an advantage and a problem. Advantage because it pushes the team's performance to the maximum. Problem because it forces us to manage egos, technical directions and priorities at a time when the car is still in the construction phase. So what we are seeing at Fiorano is not just a test. It is the beginning of an internal battle that can define the future of Ferrari. And all this brings us to an inevitable question that we are going to unleash in the next act. Because if the SF-26 is already responding like this under controlled conditions, with Hamilton accelerating its development, how far can this car really go when everything is at stake? And then we reach the point where everything fits, where every piece of information, every lap and every decision within Fiorano begins to reveal the true dimension of what Ferrari has on its hands. Because what seemed like a simple private test becomes something much bigger, a silent validation that the SF-26 project not only works, but can change the order within the team from the first moment. What Ferrari is beginning to understand after all this work with Lewis Hamilton is that they are not facing a traditional adaptation process. He is not a driver who needs time to understand the car. He is a driver who accelerates the development of the car from the first contact. And that completely alters the internal times of the team. Because now it's no longer just about improving the SF-26, it's about deciding where to evolve it. And this is where the most delicate element of this whole story comes in. Ferrari has two paths on the table. On the one hand, follow the line that they have historically built around Charles Leclerc, an approach that prioritizes aggressive driving, highly dependent on the front axle, seeking that limit at corner entry that maximizes speed in one lap. But on the other hand, Hamilton's reading appears. A more complete, more stable approach, more focused on the management of the car throughout the runs, on consistency, on the ability to adapt. And what happened in Fiorano tips the balance more than many believe. Because when a car responds well to both styles, you have potential. But when it starts to respond better to one of them in terms of consistency, degradation, and ease of use, that's where you define your competitive identity. And that's exactly what Ferrari is starting to discover with the SF-26. Hamilton has not only been fast, he has been efficient. And that difference is what can mark championships. Furthermore, there is a point that ends this whole scenario. Trust. Not the external trust, not the media narrative, the internal trust of the team. Engineers, mechanics, strategists, everyone begins to see that the car responds, that the driver responds, that the pieces fit together. And when that happens in Formula One, the performance jump between what you are and what you can become is drastically reduced. Ferrari is no longer testing. It is building something with clear direction. And that makes this Fiorano test much more than just a private session. It makes it the true starting point for SF-26. The SF-26, which is still a project under construction, has already shown something fundamental. It has a solid foundation. But more importantly, he has shown that he can be molded, that he can evolve in different directions, and that with the right pilot he can reach a level much higher than expected. And this is where it all makes sense. Because while Charles Leclerc remains the team's natural reference, Hamilton has introduced a new variable that Ferrari did not have. A second competitive vision just as strong, just as valid, but different. And that combination may be precisely what they needed to take the next step. What we saw in Fiorano was not definitive, but it was revealing. Revealing that Hamilton is much more prepared than many thought. Revealing that Ferrari has built a car with more potential than it seemed. And revealing that, for the first time in a long time, the pieces begin to fit from the beginning. Now, the real test has not yet come. Because all of this happened in a perfect, controlled environment with no real pressure. And Formula One does not forgive when conditions change. It will be on the track, in the race, under tension, where we will see if all this work translates into results. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.